Cheap usually smells like compromise, especially when you're talking firearms. There's no room for excuses on the firing line. For decades, the phrase budget revolver meant loose tolerances, rough finishes, and triggers that felt toy-like. But by 2025, that old shorthand is breaking. Brands that once lurked at the bargain bin have sharpened their engineering. They're bringing real design sense, solid materials, and performance that punches above their price tag. That shift matters because it changes who can get capable defensive hardware without selling a kidney. We're no longer talking about throwaway tools for people who can't afford better. We're seeing compact, reliable revolvers with smart features, and they don't pretend to be something they're not. If you care about value per round, this is the moment to pay attention. Picture this: an ultra-light Ruger that disappears on your belt but takes +P loads without whining. Or a Taurus built from the ground up to accept a micro red dot and still stay pocketable. That kind of thinking would have been surprising 5 years ago. Now it's the new baseline. Let's start with a sleeper that's been quietly turning heads at local ranges, the Diamond Back Firearms SDR. This short-barrel revolver delivers 6 rounds of .357 Magnum in a stainless steel package that, unloaded, weighs only 21.2 ounces. That's lighter than many 5-shot competitors and still fits a full-size Magnum chamber, a remarkable engineering trade-off. The 2-inch barrel wears a 45-degree crowned muzzle and a full-length underlug that shields the ejector rod. The aesthetic is clean and functional, not slapped together. Diamond Back didn't skimp on sights either. Fiber optic front and a green fiber optic rear make target acquisition in fast situations far easier than the tiny notch and post setups most snubs use. Mechanically, the cylinder is fluted and turns counterclockwise, which will feel familiar to anyone who's handled a Ruger LCR. The overall diameter is slightly larger than a typical 5-shot, but in hand, it doesn't bulk up the package. It just gives you that extra round without wrecking concealability. Chamfered chambers make hand-loaded or speed-loader-assisted reloads friendlier too. Here's a feature that blew me away. The SDR uses 2 release methods. You still have the push button on the left side, but there's an additional latch on the right, just forward of the trigger guard, that lets you remove the entire cylinder assembly for maintenance in seconds. That's a clever, practical touch you rarely see on entry-level revolvers. Trigger weight in double action comes in around 9 pounds and 9 ounces in the stock setup. Surprisingly smooth and consistent for this price tier. Flip to single action and you're looking at about 3 pounds, 2 ounces, crisp enough for deliberate shots. For a gun that retails around $750 in its official catalog but commonly trades hands in the $500 neighborhood, this is unexpected value. Another plus, it accepts Smith & Wesson J-frame grips, so swapping to a larger, more ergonomic handle is a straightforward option. Out on the range, the SDR swallowed 38 Special +P and .357 Magnum without hiccup. No stovepipes, no timing issues, just reliable function. Diamond Back didn't stumble into the revolver game. They came with intent. The SDR shows a level of polish that says they plan to stick around. If you thought budget snubs were predictable, this one just rewrote the playbook. And if you think that's surprising, wait until you see what Taurus did with their 505 series. If you thought small snubs couldn't carry modern features, Taurus just laughed and mounted a micro red dot onto a taser-ready platform. The Taurus 605 TORO takes the basic 505 concept and stretches it into something that actually makes sense on the street. It's a .357 Magnum-capable revolver with a 3-inch barrel that finds a rare balance, long enough to tame muzzle blast and improve velocity, short enough to remain carry-friendly. The headline on this gun is the optics-ready top strap. Taurus fitted a removable plate milled for micro red dots. That's not a gimmick. It changes the entire engagement profile of a snub. Fast shots become surgical. You're not wrestling with a tiny notch and a dot. You're pointing the dot and driving shots where you want them. For defenders who train with optics, that means a faster, more forgiving sight picture under stress. Of course, there's a trade. The iron sights don't cohabit peacefully with the optic. If the dot dies, rare, but possible, your backup is limited. That's a conscious design choice in favor of speed. Build-wise, the TORO is stainless steel with a matte black finish and clocks in around 23.5 ounces unloaded. That weight gives the frame enough mass to absorb a chunk of recoil, especially with a 3-inch tube out front. Capacity stays at 5 rounds. No 6-cylinder here. Taurus chose to prioritize compactness and a slimmer grip profile. The extended ejector rod under the underlug helps when you're running speed loaders or stripper clips, and the rubberized compact grip with finger grooves keeps the revolver from torquing violently when you feed it full-power rounds. Out on the range, the TORO behaves like a well-mannered mid-size revolver. 357 Magnum still kicks, don't pretend otherwise, but the front weight and decent grip mitigate snatch. If you cross-train with 38 Special Plus P, you'll get a much gentler practice rhythm. Retail pricing sits around $463 on the books, and in the wild, it's often less. For someone who wants optical speed without the custom gunsmith bill, that's a tidy value proposition. Now switch gears to something built for steadiness, not concealment. The Rossi RM66. If you want a classical 6-inch barrel feel with modern tolerances, this is the pick. It's a 6-inch 357 Magnum with a full underlug and stainless steel bones that clock in at about 34.4 ounces unloaded. That's enough mass to make Magnum loads manageable and to give you a sight radius that begs for accuracy. Rossi's approach here is pragmatic. The front sight is interchangeable, fiber optic or tritium, and the rear sight adjusts for windage and elevation. The trigger in single action breaks around 2 pounds 7 ounces, which is a serious improvement over the heavy double-action pull, and that makes precise shooting a pleasure. For home defense shooters and range rats who want a capable Magnum with a tame recoil impulse, the RM66 is a sensible pick. Street prices hover near $637, which keeps it competitive against pricier name-brand Magnums. Then there's the Ruger LCR in 38 Special Plus P, which takes featherweight concealability to the extreme. Using a polymer frame, an aluminum top strap, and steel critical components, Ruger carved down the unloaded weight to roughly 13.5 ounces. That's pocketable magic. The payoff is a sharp recoil impulse with stout loads. The Ruger's trigger geometry and leverage system give a smoother pull than you'd expect from something so light, but training with manageable loads is mandatory if you want to keep your follow-up shots useful. Each of these designs solves a different problem. Taurus gave you optic-ready speed in a carry package. Rossi delivers measured control and a sight radius for accuracy. Ruger shrank the footprint so you can carry without noticing. The common thread? Value that isn't a euphemism for compromise. Which one speaks to your carry philosophy? Speed, accuracy, or minimal weight? If you want old-school charm without a mortgage payment attached, step into the Heritage Rough Rider in 22LR. This single-action 6.5 model is a time machine built for plinking and predictable fun. With a 6.5-inch barrel and an overall length of 11.78 inches, it has the balance and sight radius that make learning fundamentals feel like a pleasure, not a chore. The frame mixes an aluminum alloy body with a steel barrel and cylinder, keeping unloaded weight down to about 33.4 ounces. That weight tames recoil and gives the gun a reassuring, traditional heft, the kind of tactile feedback that teaches good trigger control. Loading it single action invites a rhythm older shooters remember. Cock the hammer, take a breath, press. The fixed sights are simple but serviceable, and the trigger hovers around 4 pounds. Forgiving, ideal for new shooters and for range days where you want to stretch 80s targets into groupable hits. There's even a cylinder option for 22 Magnum if you want a little extra sting. For a street price sitting near $190, the Rough Rider gives you make-no-excuses fun and a tactile lesson in revolver basics. Flip the scale to an everyday carry utility, and you land on the Smith Wesson M&P Bodyguard 38. This is a 5-shot, double-action-only pocket-sized revolver with a 1.875-inch tube and a polymer frame that resists snags in a shirt pocket. It's designed to be invisible until it needs to be violent. The tiny profile and the hidden hammer make it the archetype of deep concealment. Unloaded weight sits around 14.4 ounces, a trade-off that buys you comfort in daily carry. Some will complain the trigger is heavy, roughly 12 pounds, and they're not wrong. That high pull is intentional, a safety measure so your carry gun doesn't go off from an accidental brush. That said, skilled hands can smooth it with lighter springs, and the optional Crimson Trace laser that some versions add for a modest premium is a real low-light force multiplier. If you want a blunt, reliable tool to disappear into a pocket and produce immediate, uncompromising deterrence, the Bodyguard 38 is a pragmatic, cost-conscious choice around $449 without laser, and with laser at about $528 depending on the package. Finally, let me close with an import sleeper that punches way above its sticker, the SR38 from SAR Firearms, imported from synonymous in Turkey. Think of this as a distant cousin to the classic Smith & Wesson 6-shot profile, but priced to hurt the complacency of domestic makers. Available with 4 and 6-inch tubes, the 4-inch model strikes a sound compromise for home defense and service use, while the full-size 6-incher delivers a sight radius and stability that practically forces you to shoot smaller groups. Unloaded weight is roughly 41 ounces on the 4-inch, giving it the mass to absorb 357 Magnum snatch and deliver consistent, repeatable breaks. The cylinder release rides forward in a familiar pattern, and the rear sight is adjustable with a high, replaceable front blade. Thoughtful touches not always present at this price. Double action pull ran around 11 pounds 5 ounces, while single action broke in at approximately 5 pounds 15 ounces, heavier than some expect, but honest and repeatable. Street map hovers near $649, a fraction of what domestic 6-shot magnums cost. So what's the through line here? Value, plain and simple. Whether you prioritize classic teaching tools, ultra concealment, or a mass that soaks magnum recoil, modern budget revolvers give you options that used to live only in pricier catalogs. These guns don't pretend to be boutique art. They promise function, and in field conditions, they often deliver. Which of these solves your problem tonight? The teaching bench, the deep concealment pocket, or the heavy-hitting home defender? Pick your role, then pick the tool that fits it. If you liked this rundown, hit like, subscribe, share with a friend who's on a budget but wants reliability, and ring that bell. We'll keep testing, pushing, and calling out the guns that actually earn their price.